This crash was bizarre. It was nothing like what we'd seen before. For this was a road crash in the sky, 4,200 meters above sea level. And in the most unusual of circumstances. The biggest dilemma of being a crash investigator is that crashes repeat themselves. The same mistakes are done again and again, producing similar results. At the end, it's just a copy of a copy of a copy. But not this time though. This was different. Babusar Pass, Pakistan is one of the highest mountain passes in the world. At this altitude, even trees do not survive. The mighty Naga Parbat, the deadliest of all 14 8,000-meter peaks in the world, overlooks the pass. Low oxygen and air pressure make even breathing difficult for some people here. And these Himalayan roads, they are notorious for being dangerous. They are narrow, steep, and landslide prone. But crashes on these roads either have vehicles falling off cliffs or rocks falling on them. Neither was the case here. This was different. The bus was present on the road, and according to the first reports, nothing hit it. Yet, there were 28 bodies to be accounted for. Since the majority of these fatalities were soldiers returning from Kashmir, the government wanted an ADCR detailed inquiry into the matter. But this wreckage showed no signs of an ambush or any explosives. This was a traffic collision. The sides of the bus showed no impact marks of any other vehicle being involved. The rear of the bus showed no sign of any other vehicle either. The front, however, had a major impact mark. Apparently, the bus had hit a rock wall before a hairpin bend right after crossing the Babusar top while descending. For us, the investigators, there was now a list of questions that needed an answer to. Why did the driver hit the rock wall instead of turning? Was the driver asleep? Was he intoxicated or under any sort of drugs? And more importantly, what speed was he on? Investigators use many methods to measure speed. One of them is called the speedometer method in vehicles with analog speedometers. The speedometer dial is enclosed inside a closed compartment, but fine dust particles slowly find their way in and settle over the dial over the years. When a crash occurs, the sudden shock makes the needle strike the dial. This leaves a small imprint on the dust, and that imprint can be traced using a small UV light and a magnifying glass. But the real shock in this case was where the mark was, at an insane 115 kilometers per hour. On a road like this, every step of this investigation was raising more questions than it was answering. Why would someone drive up here at that speed? And the other question was this reading true? After all, the mark could have been left by any piece of debris. The team couldn't base its investigation on one mark alone. Some other evidence had to be out there. And then came another bright idea, projectile method. When any moving body suddenly stops, anything on top or loosely mounted keeps traveling at the same speed. How far that object travels can be used to calculate the speed of the vehicle using the projectile equation. The value calculated from the furthest debris was the same. This bus was fast, very fast. But why? The police did a background check to see if the driver was new or new to the mountains, or was he into any drugs. Turned out he was a native of the Himalayan town of Skardu. He was a regular driver on this particular route and had no drug history whatsoever. But then why would he? Knowing that there'd be a hairpin head. He surely could not have been drowsy either. This road is not easy to drive on, and at that speed would require full alertness. But what if it wasn't by choice? But what if the brakes failed, as they commonly do in the Himalayas? Upon examination, all brake components look fine. The brake pads showed no sign of burning or charcoal deposits, and the pads looked okay too. But then again, this still does not prove that the brakes were working and applied. After all, the fault could have been elsewhere, and they might have been in working condition and not applied. The only conclusive proof in this case was if skid marks were found on the road. Realizing this, the team surveyed the road ahead. It was October, and the first snowstorm of the season was expected. The road authorities had already cleared this road for traffic for the winter season. The problem now was time. Frustratingly, no skid marks were found in these damp, cold conditions, and with the storm imminent, the team was now considering aborting the mission. But just then, a nut on the road was spotted, and then 3 more of them. The light rust condition suggested that they were there for a day or 2 on the road at max. But then again, they were 600 meters before the actual crash site and could be unrelated. There could have been some breakage in the braking system on the bus. With time running out, the team rushed back to the bus. Under the bus again, the suspected brake servo had all 4 nuts intact. But as the detective turned, he found the drive shaft missing and all 4 nuts of the rear flange missing, the same nuts that he found on the road. But why the drive shaft in the first place? The drive shaft is a component of the bus that transmits power from the engine to the rear wheel. And if it was to break, it should have broken while the bus was climbing, not while descending. As a last-ditch effort, the detective went inside. Going inside is the hardest part. Human blood, stench, screams, they're all so tangible. It's like a mass grave. And inside were 8 bottles of brake oil. The GB police informed us that the driver had bought 8 bottles of brake oil from a petrol station near Chillas in the middle of the night. 8 bottles of brake oil at 3 a.m. Wait a minute. There was brake oil leaking from the brake servo. How did we miss that? Now this all made sense. While traveling down Karakoram highway, the driver Ashraf Hussain felt the brake pedal going down. He suspected a leakage and duly called his manager up. But in an act of sheer criminal negligence, the manager instructed the driver to stock up on brake oil bottles and top up oil whenever he felt the pedal dropping and continue on his journey. The driver followed orders. But as luck would have it, the 34-kilometer road from Chillas to Babusar is a continuous climb. It is a climb so continuous that the brakes were never used. As soon as the bus crossed the mountaintop and started descending, Ashraf realized that the brakes were non-existent. He pressed the pedal in panic. It bottomed out. As a last resort, he yanked the gear in first and let go of the clutch. But that sudden shock broke the shaft. Now the vehicle was in free fall. He screamed for all the passengers to jump out, but nobody dared. Ashraf decided not to jump out himself. He kept trying to control the vehicle as it got faster and faster and faster, until he came to a hairpin. There he had a split-second decision to make, either to throw the bus down the ravine or to hit the rock wall, sacrifice himself in a bid to save other passengers. He made a choice. Had this been a standardized bus, maybe only 2-3 people would have lost their lives. Without meals, maybe a couple more. But in this particular case, the substandard seats got dislodged from the floorboard and impaled all passengers. The ambient air pressure was much lower than the pressure inside human bodies, which led to profuse bleeding. And as the windows broke, it suddenly exposed all passengers to ice-cold winds. And by the time rescue services arrived 2 hours later, 28 lives had been lost. This case wasn't different after all. It was everything we had seen before as crash investigators. Deadly roads and unfit vehicles have been piling up bodies on these roads season after season, year after year. By comparison, less people die trying to climb up Pakistan's deadly mountains. Sadly, GB government's inability to act and the corruption within the system has eaten up every opportunity to change. For ADCR, a small road crash investigation and vehicle safety research group in Pakistan, this was yet another futile week at work. The calls for better vehicle safety standards might again go unheard by the government. It is an uphill battle to convince the government to prioritize human development issues like road safety and vehicle safety instead of military spending. And until that happens, we shall sadly see this happen again.